Hey guys, Veebat here with another V-Plays, and we are taking out the Focke-Wulf 252. The Focke-Wulf 252 I feel is lacking in many regards, and usually I try and find the best things in an aircraft, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about its strengths before we focus on some of the weaknesses, maybe even dwell. It only gets 230s, which is it sounds like you're complaining. You're like, oh, it only gets 230s. On a fighter, that's still pretty impressive firepower. But the thing is, these 30s, they feel inaccurate because you're only firing 2 of them, and 30s are inherently temperamental. I think anybody who's flown any type of fighter or heavy aircraft knows that it takes a little bit of time to learn the lead, use the lead appropriately, and be able to get some good damage out on your targets. And this aircraft is no different. So what's this aircraft's claim to fame? It's going to be a high acceleration, high overall top speed, and then of course it does have some pretty good firepower once you're able to sink it in, once you're able to lock it in on target. I am totally going after a Yak 30 right now, and he killed me. But we killed each other. I'm not quite sure why he was up at this altitude, and honestly I should have zoomed in on that one in order to ensure I was getting good hits. My goal was not to ram him over the zone, but as far as force multipliers go, I'm glad I eliminated him. I'm going to go ahead and head back in there and see what we can do to try and even the playing field. I really should have hit an F2 on this as soon as we started the battle as well. Lessons learned. Let's go ahead and do that now. See if we can coax an aircraft over there, maybe get an F3 going. Because of the timing, this means that there will be a Yak 30 coming into the zone at about the same time. Might as well go after this bomber, since they're going after ours, and maybe this will even the playing field a little. This aircraft still, like its little brother, does a good job at intercepting bombers, but I wouldn't want to be the first one in, especially against a tier 10. Just because there's so much firepower coming out of him. This guy really has this thing built for speed, I think. Why he's up this high, I'll never know. We'll have to try again. Got him. XF90? Actually, this is a good chance to showcase the ability to kind of stick with speedy fighters, I should say, like an XF90, which is atypical. I'm sure a lot of you out there have been killed by these things before, and here we are giving it a bit of a run for its money due to its ability to operate at higher altitudes with good engine power. And I'm not bragging about taking out a 228. Let's go ahead and head for one of these bombers again. Maybe that Yak 30 realizes he shouldn't be up at these altitudes. I'm gonna go ahead and burn in closer to this guy. Sitting in this guy's tail gunner is not a good idea, and we are suffering for it. We may be losing that center zone now as a result. Oh, that's unfortunate. Let's go ahead and try and get back in there and see if we can make up for our mistake. My eyes are a little bit bigger than my stomach, I should say. Ooh, I think we might be losing our airfield as well. Yep. Yeah, that's a disadvantage right there. We need all hands in the middle, And I'm going to go ahead and dab that F3 key and request some support, and maybe I can get somebody to come in here. So we just got 2 aircraft to come into the zone. That XF-90 is back. Picked up the other airfield, so that's something. Trying to keep these guns from overheating too much so I can get better consistent damage out here. 1 down. Get that increased maneuverability, try and protect my bomber if I can. Okay, he was taken out by an ally. In a lot of ways, this aircraft reminds me of my F6U. High speed, low maneuverability, but good guns. And the F6U is also fairly unloved as well. There we go. Little bit of lag on these cannons. There's that XF-90. Can we get up underneath him? Took out his engine. Got our bomber, however. Still a really good heavy hunter.
Receiving reports about rapidly deteriorating weather conditions. Support will be unable to reach you. Do you read me? Over. A rocket has reached the target. Enemy objects damaged.
Letting those guns cool down a little bit. There we go. Killed him in the zone. We need to be defending this area. Oh, he took my engine. That's gonna be trouble. Let's dip that nose.
We cannot support you any longer. The storm is too heavy. Do you copy? Over.
This is squall line. If I can get this engine back up. Engine's back up. It's a good guess on the timing. Okay, he is gone. He took my engine out yet again. There's a low health ground attacker over here I would really like to get my teeth into. Good. I think we may have turned the tables on this one despite losing our engine. Engine's back up. There we go. Finally chunked him away. Let's head up. A couple of heavies and a bomber. Coming up from underneath people, diving down on people. These are all really good strengths of this airframe. XF-90 is doubling back around. Looks like he's going into a bit of a vertical here. Oh, unfortunately the XF-90 got the kill and we lost the center zone. That may be it for us. Picked up a Wing Legend. There we go. Kazuda medal. Yeah, they do almost have us, don't they? We gotta keep them from getting air supremacy if we can. Okay, I got him. We know there's a bomber up here somewhere. There he is. This would be revenge for earlier. Got him. This is kind of a capture or kill all type of a situation here, but I don't think we're going to have the time to do it.
This is our last chance.
Oh, there's only a few of us left anyways. Yowza. Head on with an I-215. Probably not my best move. He actually has a little bit of good maneuverability going on there, but whew, what a tough fight and a loss. That's unfortunate for us, but I do think it does showcase the types of targets this aircraft can go up against and how it can be used. This is going to be probably one of those fighters that requires pairs just because it can't shake aircraft off its own tail. I'd wonder what two 252s might do with one another, or some other comparable aircraft like a Swift. Might be something Postal and I'll have to test out if he flies a Swift and I fly this. Both of our damage combined might be able to do some pretty good work. With my strong roll rate, I might be able to keep an aircraft occupied long enough for a Swift to come in and give me a hand. Anyways, I do compare this a lot to the Swift, mostly because looking at all of our altitude fighters we see here, the F-86 sports some pretty good maneuverability, well, the best maneuverability for an altitude fighter, while the MiG-15 gets pretty good airspeed. The 1101 also gets similar type airspeed, but instead of having chunk damage, it more or less uses high DPM guns with really good consistent rate of fire and damage, while the 252 we've already seen it favors high gun damage and good speed. So how do these actually compare? Well, the damage armament on the 1101 actually trumps everything with 800 damage cumulative. So it's really hard to argue against the 1101 over the Focke-Wulf 252. So out of these 5 aircraft, that is going to be your best option. Survivability, yeah, sure, the 252 has higher survivability, which means that it can go up against those bomber aircraft and be able to sustain itself fairly well to be able to get the shots it needs to get out. But we saw when you try and come in from the rear hemisphere against an aircraft with a strong tail gunner, you're just going to get torn apart. So don't advise doing that. You're looking more for like a damaged bomber that you can finish off fairly easily and quickly with these big guns. A lot of times I call this it's just another assist generator, because you're going to be able to get some good hits in, cripple an aircraft, and hopefully an ally will be able to finish it off. When it comes to airspeed, while the airspeed is going to say that it's lower than things like the MiG-15 or the F-86, bear in mind that that is taking a few different factors under consideration, but we do have higher boost duration, and while the top boost speed is only 633, it is still going to be very competitive when it comes to acceleration, and that's something to consider as well, because that is another factor a lot of people ignore. When it comes to the fastest altitude fighter, or I should just say the fastest light fighter in the game, is going to be the Swift. The Swift has the ability to get up to 665. We'll talk more about that aircraft at a later date, but this is really going to be the hero of this group. So we've already seen that the MiG-15 really fast, strong, chunky guns. The P1101 has really good gun performance. It is the best and most consistent gun performance. We know, and when it comes to the maneuverability stats, that we're actually going to see the maneuverability under the F-86 being really high. With a 9.1 turn time at altitude, this thing's going to be the king of being able to dogfight at altitude, and most aircraft know that and try to avoid it. The Focke-Wulf 252, however, is going to be the worst. The only reason that this even broaches the 50 mark for maneuverability is because it has such a high roll rate. It has the highest roll rate of any of these aircraft, which means that it can spin really well. I'm sure there's a tactic that can be used for that. If you wanted to try and scissor with another aircraft, you'd actually be in a good spot to be able to do that, because eventually I think you'd be able to turn the tables. But with the maneuverability being so low, it makes it very, very difficult. And while people say the Swift isn't a maneuverable aircraft, with a 10.6 turn time, it actually is fairly competitive with the other two altitude fighters we see here. So be careful if you try and ignore that aircraft, trust me. Alright, altitude performance, all these are altitude fighters, so we already know that they're all going to have similar altitude performance. Here we go. It's actually higher altitude performance for the F-86 and the MiG-15, but we're going to see that the altitude performance for the 252 Swift and 1101 are all identical. The acceleration of the 252 is going to seriously outpace that of the 1101, and is actually going to be slightly better than the MiG-15. But the F-86 Sabre is still going to be able to climb a little bit faster, and this Swift is going to have the best. For those of you that have watched my videos in the past, you'll know that I kind of use this as a metric for acceleration, and I feel like the Swift is going to be able to get up to speeds very quickly. As well, the 252 is definitely not bad when we saw it in the battle. The thing was very consistently hanging at much higher speeds than you would typically expect, which gives it a good chance to do some serious work. And this aircraft was able to hang with an XF-90. Granted, an XF-90 bot, but we were able to hang with him when he was flying in a straight line, and the 252 was able to make short work of him with those 30s. So I think there may be a spot for a 252, but right now I feel like it's just lacking in so many ways that it probably needs a bit of a buff in some way in order to make it competitive with these other four aircraft. Because as far as all these other aircraft are concerned, they all have a niche. The Swift is the fastest. The 1101 has the best guns. The MiG-15 and the F-86 have the best altitude performance. And we can't discount that the MiG-15, while it does have a erratic gun configuration of two different calibers, that when that 30 makes contact, it really does hurt and can cause some serious damage to the aircraft, while the F-86 Sabre is highly maneuverable, the most maneuverable aircraft in this altitude regime, with a 9.1 second turn time in the configuration I currently have it in. So what's the claim to fame for the 252? It has more survivability. Not even more, right? The F-86 is actually going to be comparable. It has the identical type of characteristics and actually has a higher resistance to damage with the current setup I have. So what has the 252 got? Honestly, I don't think it has much of anything going for it. So it is a tough aircraft to fly, and I think showing a loss for the flight, highlighting this aircraft, is probably more apt to give you guys a realistic representation of it. I like my 183. I think the 183 has a cool little niche for itself, but this is going to be probably one of the first times I tell you guys that I don't know if I can make this tier 10 work as effectively as these other aircraft. I would much rather have the Swift if I was looking for 30s. I would much rather have the F-86 for maneuverability, or even the MiG-15 when it comes to speed, compared to the Focke-Wulf 252. So it's a tough call, guys. But if you are grinding down the line and you are doing the Focke-Wulf line, and both of those tier 10s are really not necessarily what you're looking for, you may want to reconsider if that's what you're looking for as your first tier 10. Both the BVP 215 and the Focke-Wulf 252 are just really tough aircraft to grind through. So highly recommend, if you're doing the Germans, to focus on either the fighters or going after the heavy aircraft over here because the BF-109 line has nothing but gems all the way through. And the German heavy fighters. I know people who like every single one of these German heavy fighters, so yeah. Sorry, a little bit more of a negative review, but I hope you guys enjoyed it anyways, and it gives you a little bit of insight as to what to expect as you're grinding down those lines. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one.
Just like a soldier.